Art challenges have always been a struggle for me. I don't plan ahead or can't think of any ideas, and before long I'm falling behind and decide to give it up and try another challenge later. The last time I attempted one was probably a few years ago now. Oops. So last November I decided I was going to start and actually finish an art challenge using a selection of my OCs and fan OCs. I had my sights on November, but 30 drawings is kind of a lot, and since I don't have a great track record for finishing these challenges, I looked for alternatives and... ta-da! 8 colours, each representing an OC. Perfect! I live streamed work on each one over the course of November for a little bit more accountability and aimed to post 2 a week, which was way more manageable. Given my track record, I approached with very cautious optimism, but at the end of November, it was mission complete. So, because this video's taken long enough to make already, let's get to it and meet each OC. Red is up first with a very special OC of mine, Akala. She's the main character of a webcomic I'm hoping to start posting later this year, Vitalis. Mana's history is a long one. I first drew her around 20 years ago, partially inspired by a mix of character design elements in Shaman King and Final Fantasy X. The sleeves disappeared years ago, replaced by long, fingerless gloves, but the dress has remained a consistent part of her design since the beginning. Her eyes were originally a shineless gradient with no pupils, and she never used to have an antenna. Feels weird imagining her without one now. Other aspects of her design were tweaked to match her personality and overall vibe. Her shorter hair that frames her face, that's always been there, but officially now it's due to her fidgeting a lot with it, so it never grows very long. Mana's actually been in a webcomic before, Vitalis' predecessor, very edgily called Tainted Souls. It exists somewhere online still, I think? Maybe on the Internet Archive? R.I.P. Smack Jeeves, still miss you buddy. She changed so much as a character since those days, but in other ways I still see her as the same girl I drew during a science class at school one day. The story used to be kind of all over the place. A lack of logic in the story, coupled with no real world building past a couple of ground rules, made it hard to stick with. I think I must have started the story from scratch 5 or 6 times before finally figuring it out. Even that's taken a few years to iron out though. In the world of Tainted Souls, there exist those known as Gifted, people who were born with various powers. Mana Atoshi, as she was known back then, is one such Gifted, and was born with many different abilities, such as fire, darkness, earth, the list goes on. And it's getting longer. Over the years, she seems to be learning new powers she wasn't even born with. She has no idea if this is natural or not, as she's been alone since a kidnapping incident when she was 10 years old, with no memory of her life before then. Now 17 years old, she still wanders the lands, constantly hunted down by an organisation who wants to use her powers for their own evil plans. After one such encounter, she happens to meet a young man named Arx, who seems to know her from her forgotten past all those years ago. Also, there were some military-related elements to the story. I think the evil organisation was called Biolith or something? I wish I could remember more of the original idea. But it was a roleplay thread that's long gone, sadly. It didn't stick around for long though, because shortly afterwards I switched up a lot of details which brought it more in line with how the story is now. Mana now has a twin sister, Celeste, is 19 years old, can remember her past, and there was still a kidnapping incident, but it caused Mana to be separated from Celeste and her mother. She still wanders, but it's to run away from what's happened, so she doesn't have to deal with the clear fact that her family hasn't tried to find her over the years. But even with this revamp, everything was still kind of all over the place. All a great foundation for who Mana has become now though. In the world of Vitalis, Vita is the life force of the planet, and manifests itself most strongly in humans, giving them abilities and physical attributes dependent on the element or the type of Vita they are born with. I'll be showing that off a bit more with a later character, but the more Vita a person is born with, the fewer physical traits they tend to have, as they kind of get diluted. Most people are born with 1 or 2 Vita, 3 being a rarity. Mana was born with 5, fire, shadow, ice, earth and air. Such a rare sight is bound to bring attention, but Mana wants none of it. She has a bit of an unpredictable temperament, due to her many Vitas seeming to be in disarray with each other, leading to her headspace not being that great. She tends to keep to herself, deflecting talk about personal topics, and preferring not to deal with others if she can help it. She has exceptions, of course, such as her sister Celeste and her girlfriend Amaranth. Mana begins the story feeling lost in life, driven to a state of inaction due to a conflicting stream of thoughts swirling in her head. She's attending the prestigious Ravencroft Academies, it should be a dream come true. But to Mana, it's never felt like that. She wants to get away, but finds herself unable to. That changes, however, upon meeting an enthusiastic boy who offers her a chance to escape, and a discovery that brings to light the declining state of their world. We'll be meeting Mana's new friend a little later on, but for now... We have Orange, a Pokémon OC, Trainer Azure. Azure was created for a one-shot Halloween video, the found recordings of Trainer Azure. I've linked it in the description and would super love if you could go check it out. For those who've already seen it, beware of spoilers for the video and concepts from behind it, from now until about 8 minutes 39. I got the idea for the story years ago, but it took a long time to figure out how I wanted to present the story of a glitch told through the eyes of a trainer experiencing it, and which glitch I wanted to represent. I eventually decided on using the PokeW trainer glitch, with hints of a couple other glitch effects too. Some nasty things can happen in these games. I can't even begin to imagine how it would feel to experience it all firsthand. Inspirations in hand, I finally decided on telling the story audio-visually, and the next part was easy, who I wanted to voice Azure. In my head, it could be no one else but my wonderful friend Cake of the Muse. Thankfully, she was on board right away, and collaborating with her on the script made working on it an absolute joy. I'll link her YouTube channel in the description so you can go check her out. Thank you so much, Kate. Love you. The voice may have been an easy choice, but Azure's design was a little trickier to pin down. I wanted blue in her colour palette because of her name, but orange absolutely had to be there too, because it's Cake's favourite colour. That's why Azure's in the orange section of this video too. Once I had the colours down, the rest of the design fell into place, thankfully, complete with my usual love of skirts with shorts underneath. No, I will not be stopping anytime soon. Callouts aside, Azure's story begins on the day she becomes a Pokémon trainer, and we follow her through a series of voice diaries she makes as she goes on her journey, accompanied by a Bulbasaur, Mint. Her journey starts off well enough, catching a few Pokémon and getting her first badge, but after accidentally fleeing from another trainer, her Pokégear begins to glitch. She returns to apologise and discovers a strange mess of static towering over her on Nugget Bridge. It doesn't look like a Pokémon, but it must be, right? What else could it be? Well, one Pokeball later and it's caught, so that settles it. But the Pokédex gives no information, nor does it act like any Pokémon she's seen or heard before. Is this truly a newly discovered Pokémon? She names it the only legible text she can see on its Pokédex entry, Raina. She should be proud of this achievement, but her Pokémon begin to act strangely, and she finds sleep harder to attain by the day. She's at a loss for what to do, but carries on regardless, wanting to prove herself as a capable trainer. Upon facing Lieutenant Surge, she finds herself in a tight spot. Her team is dwindling, and she gambles everything on Raina finishing the job. It just needs to attack his Raichu and... Poor Azure. So determined but so naive. A dangerous combination in this scenario. I wanted to keep an open-endedness to her story, framing the recordings as files that have been found on a Pokégear separated from its owner, with no outside sources to confirm what we're hearing. Funnily enough though, revisiting some old glitches while doing research reminded me of the ghost of Glitch City, a monochrome girl lost among a mess of buildings, landscape and numbers. It wasn't intentional, but maybe there's an idea to be had there. I asked Cake if she had anything she wanted to say about Azure.
Hi, I'm Cake, voice of Azure. It was really fun to work on Azure's story with Angel, who gave me the basic plot beats and then just kind of let me decide the rest. I wanted her to feel like a real person, with little bits about her mom telling her stories about Mount Moon and how she interacted with the world around her. I think that came across pretty well, which makes what happened to her in the end all the more tragic.
I would genuinely love to make a follow-up for Azure someday. She definitely feels like a character with more story to be told, but what that story could be has yet to be seen. Moving on to Yellow, we have our second character from the webcomic formerly known as Tainted Souls, Vitalis. This is Mickey Flint, 21 years old and just a guy doing his best. Mickey was originally designed by a college friend, where he was initially teamed up with a guy called Mike. They were a couple of bounty hunters who played a comic relief role in the story, usually showing up in surprising ways, like smashing through a wall in a car and accidentally helping break our heroes out of trouble in the process. Mickey used to carry a wooden sword and had a duffel bag with guns written on it. Spoiler, it did not contain any guns. He was a huge show-off, especially when meeting Mana for the first time. Jumping in while Mana was doing some training, he may have tried to attack a child to play the hero. Not a good look, mate. His personality had a huge revamp over the years, but his redesign is a lot more recent. This is actually the first rendered image of his new design. His spiked blonde hair remains, but now in a style that I'm able to draw more consistently, as does his obsession with wearing no sleeves. His jacket in the past had the sleeves ripped off. Do not get this guy in sleeves. He will react like a cat in novelty headwear. Nowadays, Mickey is what's known as a Vitalis. He's never had any abilities in any version of the story, but whereas before it was due to the general population not being gifted, now it's because he wasn't born with any Vita. The biggest tell is his grey eyes, which he tends to wear sunglasses to hide when around people he doesn't trust or in unfamiliar places. Unfortunately for Vitalis, there tends to be a belief that if you were born without a Vita, you were born with no soul. A belief which is raising tension as more and more Vitalis are being born in recent years, which some believe to be a bad omen. Because of these beliefs, Mickey has ended up in more than a few fights, leading to a number of scars dotted about his body, most notably on his eyebrow and upper ear. Mickey is part of a small group who do odd jobs around the campuses. He's a surprisingly chill guy, despite his awkwardness at getting to know people. But if he can keep under the radar and not attract attention, he's remarkably good at getting information and supplies for anyone who needs it. Mickey is one of the few people Mana gets along with, and they tend to refer to each other as Red and Blondie. I'm a big fan of how their relationship has evolved over the years. They've got some real sibling energy going on. For green, we have the final character on the wheel for Vitalis. It's Kai Vendal. Kai is someone who was born with only a single Vita and exhibits all the physical traits that come with it. For his Air Vita, he has wings, face markings, and two-tone hair colours. He'll probably be a bit shorter than average when he grows up too. We love a short king. Kai was originally created by an online friend and has been part of the story since pretty much the beginning. But it's only recently I've given his design my own spin, just like with Mickey. He's kept key details from his original design. Mainly the features I said were linked to the Air Vita. He was actually the character that inspired the different physical traits inherited through each type of Vita, so that's pretty cool. Kairo Kinomoto, as he used to be known, was the second main character introduced in Tainted Souls after Mana. While getting away from a pursuer named Hunter, Mana tries to make a getaway in his car, only to find Kairo tied up in the back seat. Unable to start the engine herself, it's quickly revealed that this boy somehow knows how to hotwire a car. I think I was going for a bit of lol random, but it actually inspired Kai's current personality quite a bit. Kai, as he is now, is a hugely inquisitive mind, taking particular interest in mythology and tinkering with any tech he comes across. At 12 years old, Kai is pretty dang bright for his age, and was offered a paid-for place at the Ravencroft Academies. His parents, being low on money but wanting the best for their son, instantly accepted. As renowned as the school is, however, Kai absolutely hates it there. The classroom environment is hugely restrictive for him. He much prefers to explore or study whatever takes his interest in the library, away from the confines of the standard teaching environment. This is much to the dismay of his teachers, who have had to find him and return him to class on multiple occasions, and contend with his distractible nature when he is in class. He persists though, having gained a reputation among staff for skipping classes within only a few months of being there. The most notable time was when he was found trying to get to one of the ports on the island, in hopes of sneaking home before anyone notices. Looking for other escape methods, he comes across a map of an old underground tunnel system and finds there's a way through the winding tunnels to the port. However, unable to access a light that will last the whole trek, coupled with a fear of the dark, Kai realizes he's going to need some help. Luckily, he's got someone in mind. He just needs to find Mana Akala. Time for a fan OC now with Cheel. It's Cookie the Rabbit. Cookie is heavily based on the character I created a couple years ago when I streamed my first playthrough of Sonic Forces. There aren't a huge amount of differences to her design compared to how she first looked. Mostly some tweaks to her outfit, with a few stylistic preferences thrown in. Her name is a direct reference to the rookie name used in Forces, which she gets called often due to others mishearing her name. She tends to also go by Key in an attempt to negate this. Unfortunately, it doesn't often work. Cookie's quite a timid girl who's just getting on the best she can. She sneaks around and finds broken Eggman tech to repurpose it into something she can use, such as her glider and arm blaster. She has a strong sense of justice, but nerves get the better of her, and she finds herself hiding away and cowering instead of fighting, much to her frustration. That all changes, however, when she comes into the possession of a mysterious stone found inside a destroyed Eggman robot. Not realizing what the Phantom Ruby is capable of, she is greeted with an illusion of a peaceful field. The vision is brief, but instills her with all she needs to know about the gem, fighting back against the enemy with a courage she never thought possible. Her story goes beyond the original game, however. That's why she obtained the Ruby replica differently than in the canon. I created a retelling of sorts of the game, full of time travel and dimensional shenanigans. The original game still happens, but future events affect the course of the story drastically. In this retelling, Infinite is now no longer the Jackal we know in the game, but is instead a twisted version of Sonic from the future, moulded by Eggman into being his own personal weapon over years of imprisonment and torture at the hands of the original Infinite. He has been sent back in time so that Eggman can conquer the world back when he had first attempted to with the Phantom Ruby, rather than having to wait years to succeed. When Sonic is captured by this new version of Infinite, the timeline goes into flux and the Sonic from the past is pulled into the present to help fix things. Once Sonic is freed, it's past and present teaming up to stop the dark future from happening. During the time when Sonic is imprisoned, Cookie plays a vital role in keeping the freedom fighters and civilians safe. After days of exhausting travel and fighting, she finds there Resistance HQ, a hastily constructed hideout using an old Eggman base. Everyone is tired and on high alert from the fear of attack, and Cookie immediately offers her help. Using the ruby, the illusions she creates allows for the base to remain completely hidden from detection while further construction takes place and additional cloaking technology can be implemented. She works herself to the bone both physically and mentally helping everyone. Thankfully, she has caught the eye of Vanilla, who has made it her mission to make sure Cookie rests properly. She becomes good friends with Cream and Cheese in the process, giving her some much needed breaks. When it's found that there's even a chance that Sonic is still alive, she is one of the first to step forward, ready to risk everything to help save him. I had a lot more of this story planned out, but never committed to sharing more than the basic details, sadly. Who knows, maybe in the future I can revisit it. Now for Blue, and we're keeping up with fan characters of sorts, with one of my Warriors of Light from Final Fantasy XIV. This is Kaya Elgrave, Aura, Lancer and Dragoon in training. She hasn't gotten the high jumps figured out yet, but she's great at falling from massive heights. Kaya's creation came from a long-time curiosity to try out Final Fantasy XIV, which has not been the smoothest of tasks for me. I still find a lot of its gameplay a bit tricky to wrap my head around, but I keep chipping away at it bit by bit. Choosing an aura for my first dive into the game was easy. Dragoons are cool, how could I not? The name Kaya is taken from a character I created in a previous MMO years back, Seal Online. She'll be long gone by now, but my dragon girlie now wears that name proudly. I'm not far enough in the game to have found an outfit that I've fallen in love with yet, so I tend to find what looks nicest on her and dye whatever I can purple or blue. Kaya's a bit of an odd one. She comes across as pretty feral, probably because she is. There's a persistent rumour that she's known to bite people. The most common story passed around is when she tried to sneak into a free company. Unfortunately for her, I am playing the expanded free trial with no restrictions on playtime. So, when she was escorted out, she was absolutely not afraid to show her objection to such an injustice. You know, of trying to access a subscription mechanic on a free demo. Not sure injustice is the right word there, sweetie. She's also a kind of a disaster, both in the battlefield and when exploring. Having KO'd herself more than a few times falling off cliffs while trying to avoid enemy attacks, you'd think she'd learn to be a bit more cautious. This is absolutely not the case, as you're most likely going to find her on your journeys when she sprints by you screaming and trying to avoid attacks by enemies that are way too high level for her to be dealing with. Why is she in such high areas in the first place? She doesn't much care to say. She doesn't travel alone though. She's accompanied by a wolf pup called Torgal, who surprisingly enough does the least biting out of the two of them. She loves her little buddy though, even though he doesn't seem to do much attacking himself. She can't wait for him to get a bit older so she can train him in the ways of violence. Enemies will surely face their collective wraths. Aside from being something akin to the local cryptid, Kaya loves to spend her time in the Golden Saucer, specifically the Blunder Dome, where she quickly became dripped out in Fall Guys merch. I was tempted to draw her in all her beanie glory, but there's too much pink to get away with that in the blue slot. The Fall Guys event was a favourite thing to do in all of Eorzea. She even spent an entire period between events hiding in the lobby area because she didn't want to leave. I don't know how she got away with it for so long, but when they eventually found her, well, let's just say those rumours about biting people didn't come from nowhere. Our penultimate character in purple is also Final Fantasy related, but with one key difference. Sky Sylvestrus was created for a completely original Final Fantasy story, specifically as part of a roleplay forum in the late 2000s between me and some online friends, where what started as ourselves as Final Fantasy-esque characters soon became its own thing entirely. It wasn't hard to find a name for my character once the decision was made that they'd be their own characters. When I was around 10 years old, I had an OC called Sky, and the name has stuck with me ever since. Sylvestrus was a reference to my love of forests, and any similarities between her name and that of a character in Doctor Who is purely coincidental. I just like fancy words and alliteration, okay? Of course though, she had to be a dragoon with a purple colour scheme, because I'm a girl who knows what she likes and is absolutely not afraid to shoehorn it into everything I love. The RP didn't last that long, unfortunately, but so much of the story was discussed, I still remember most of it even now. Sky, daughter of the High General of the army, lived a peaceful life with her adopted little sister Miyuki. That is, until their mother dies suddenly and their father takes them to the capital city of Rifim to enlist in the army. Sky, aged 12, shows no proficiency for magic at all, and is forced to train as a dragoon, something not often seen in their military. Miyuki, on the other hand, is a prodigy at only age 10, with a high aptitude for white magic. Sky knows her father has his favourite, but loves her sister more than anything, willing to do whatever it takes to protect her. She still wears a bracelet Miyuki made for her years ago, a good luck charm while she was away completing her dragoon training. 7 years later, and Sky's self-worth is ridiculously low. Constant shunning from her father and being seen as weak by the other soldiers, she doesn't have a good opinion of herself, berating herself for any perceived mistakes and playing down her achievements as flukes. Using the spirits of dragons she's slain to give her strength in battle merely adds to her lack of belief in her own strength and worth. She trains and fights harder to make up for her supposed shortcomings, not realizing how far she's already come. When the army is sent to tackle a nation the kingdom has declared a threat, Sky and Miyuki must fight for their lives among the chaos of battle, and begin to have their doubts about the reasoning for their mission in the first place. Upon reuniting in the aftermath, they decide to desert the army, accompanied by a survivor of the attacked town, a black belt named Anya. Fate has brought them together, but they cannot even begin to fathom the forces at work for such a journey to happen, all at the hands of the god of dragons, Bahamut. A being created as the protector of the world's crystal, Bahamut grows tired of his crystalline master ripping the world to pieces to reset it to a far more primitive age, fearful of what would happen if anyone should obtain its power. The creation of the crystals of fire, earth, air and water, each in the form of a dragon, ease the planet's pain, but the energies of the world become more unstable with each cycle. Unable to harm the crystal itself, Bahamut manipulates the course of history so that he may bring forth champions to put this madness to rest. Countless cycles pass, until it appears the pieces are settling into place at last. Sky, Miyuki, Anya, and those they come to befriend are the key to ending the crystal's destructive nature. As a dragoon, Bahamut holds an incredible power to use Sky as a vessel, saving her from death during her final test to become a dragoon. Sky remembers none of it, returning home with terrible injuries and a fear of dragons that causes her to lash out and eliminate them as soon as she can. Which isn't great when discovering that Anya has the egg of the reincarnated air dragon in her possession, saved from her village, and the real reason for the attack that ultimately led to the party uniting. In the days, she tries to kill the air dragon, but is thankfully stopped. Dire consequences follow, as her dragoon powers fail her and Bahamut has to step in to lend his aid. A noble intent that soon becomes a race against time as Sky's soul becomes infused with Bahamut's own, making possession uncontrollable. Sky's weak soul cannot fight back against his will, making her a huge threat to her friends, as his instincts demand any threats to the crystal must be taken out, even if it was he who chose this path for them. She gets better though. After years of self-doubt, she's finally able to find who she really is and finally stand on her own, unleashing the strength from within to free herself from Bahamut's control. And she gets together with Anya too. There's so much more going on in the story and so many other characters. Maybe I can dive into it a bit more some other time. And, last but not least, for Pink we have my babiest girl in the whole world, Sophie Young, from an old webcomic of mine, Trick Song. Sophie was originally created in the late 2000s to branch away from my usual art style at the time. She was originally 14 years old, but that soon changed to 11 as I began to develop a story around her. Design-wise, her main changes were to the style itself as I got more comfortable working with it. She's always had the same colour scheme and clothing. I fell in love with her design from the off, and while she's worn various other outfits, her puffy pink sleeve heart top and blue jeans became the default wardrobe for her. The webcomic she's from, Trick Song, lasted for 3 chapters and 1 mini chapter before I lost steam with it and moved on to other projects. It's still available online for anyone wanting to see my old comic work, and over the years I've even worked on completely revamping it. I got a few pages in, but Vitalis won out in the end. The story for Trick Song was going to be episodic but with an overarching storyline. It followed the adventures of Sophie with her friends, Brett and Hannah, as they go on adventures thanks to a magical red squirrel. The squirrel begins life as a wooden figure, gifted to Sophie on her 11th birthday as the centerpiece of a music box. Unfortunately, the music box doesn't work past a note or two, but that's no problem for Sophie. Imaginative and enthusiastic, she begins to tell the squirrel stories of adventures she's played out during school break times with her friends, more than happy to accept that it's just shy and will play music when it's ready. Days of telling stories later, the box plays once more, then stops again. She names the squirrel Trick, since she was fooled into believing it was going to play at last. Then one night, it plays again, but this time it doesn't stop. But that's not all. The squirrel figure begins to glow and comes to life. Excitedly telling Sophie that her stories brought him to life, Trick tells her that he can take her to any world she wants to go to. It's all in her mind, but it'll feel like she's really there. She excitedly takes him up on the offer, travelling to a fire world from one of her break time stories, and even taking out an enormous rock titan. She brings Hannah and Brett along for the ride too, letting them create their own adventures, like befriending a dinosaur or visiting a kingdom of cloud people. Sophie's a girl who, when she feels something, she feels it a lot. Excitement, frustration, sadness. She can be seen as too much by others. She's a kid who wears a heart on her sleeve and isn't afraid to enjoy what she loves, unable to really tell when people might not be on the same page as her. The overarching story follows Sophie trying to adapt to the change in status quo when she moves from primary school to secondary school. Growing up and moving away from what she was enjoying just a couple of months ago is hard to come to terms with, and an increase in responsibilities such as homework leads her to indulge in her fantasy worlds much more as an escape, wanting life as it was before. So, Sophie's story may be a tiny bit based on real life. Minus the magic squirrel though, sadly. I think my biggest halting point for the story was that Sophie was always going to be much more imaginative than I could ever be, so creating worlds through her eyes was ridiculously daunting. I just pretended to be Pokémon, Sonic or Digimon characters with my friends when I was a kid. The worlds were already written for me. I may struggle writing your story, Sophie, but you'll always be a special lass to me. Have fun on your adventures, kiddo. And there we have it, 8 colours, 8 characters. I really hope you've enjoyed hearing about them. It's been really fun revisiting so many OCs from across the years, and getting to share a bit more about my upcoming webcomic Vitalis too. I recently posted a 4-page preview for Webcomic Day. I'll link them in the description if you'd like to check it out. Maybe someday I can try this again with some other OCs, and delve a bit deeper into past ideas I've had. It's nice to go down memory lane and talk about ideas you never fully got to realise back in the day. Anyway, go check out Cake of the Muse and give her lots of love. Until next time, have a good one!